Hi, this is Christine and welcome to Scrapping Rabbit. Like I did in my last video for the handmade guest book, I'm also including the written instructions on how to make this greeting card money holder box, and it includes the cutting dimensions for the pieces that you'll need. So have a look at the description of this video, and I'll have a link in there to this document, and you can download that and then follow along with this video tutorial. So let's get started. So in this series of videos, I'm going to make the greeting card box. And this box comes in two pieces. There's the base here, and then the top part that lifts off. Now the neat thing about this is if you wanted to keep the box, you can always flip it over and you can store it away like that. So on the top, this area here is a little bit wider than the box so that the lid fits on top. And there's the slot for the cards here. And as you can see, underneath there's a hole and the cards will fall right through to this bottom section. So let's get started with the bottom section. I'll put my camera back in the stand. Now the bottom section of the box is made with chipboard, and I get my chipboard in sheets of 12 by 12 like that. And when you're trimming your chipboard, the easiest way to do it, if you have one of these trimmers, I'll do a little example with this little piece of chipboard. When I cut through, it's not going to cut through all the way, so I would place my chipboard and cut it at the top at whatever size I need, and then I can just flip it over and then cut over again on the back, and then it'll split into like that. So that's the way I cut my chipboard with this type of cutter. And another trick too, if you have some old blades, don't throw them out, because when you're cutting through this chipboard, it's going to wear through. So you want to use some of your old blades when cutting through this type of material. So that's just a little tip for cutting through the chipboard. So I've got my 4 side pieces, and these are attached with hinges. Now I want to mention that my hinges are white, sort of ivory colored cardstock, because I wanted it to match my paper, and that little white edge of the cardstock will be showing around the box. So I wanted to use cardstock color that would be coordinating with my paper. You can also use black, you can use whatever you want. If you're going to mat from one edge to the very other edge of your side of your boxes, and this won't be visible, then you can use whatever cardstock that you want. Just like I use this colored chipboard, it doesn't matter because this is the inside of the box and the outside is going to be covered anyways. I have pre-cut my pieces. This is 11 by 11, and these are 11 inches and they are 6 inches high. And I've got 4 of these pieces that will attach around my base, like that on all sides. Here are my hinges that I cut. They measure 2 inches across, and these are 11 inches long. And then these are the side hinges, and they're only 6 inches high, and they are also 2 inches across. So I took my scoreboard and I scored my hinges halfway across the width here. So I scored, place your hinge on your scoreboard, and then you just score at 1 inch mark on all of your pieces, and then the same thing with these smaller ones, and just score at the 1 inch mark, and then you can fold these in two. I'm going to start by attaching my long hinges, and I will attach them to the center piece. One on each side, like that, underneath. And then I will be able to attach the side panels to the other side of the hinge. So let's start by putting a little bit of glue, and I'm going to attach each of my hinges underneath my base. And I like using just plain tacky glue for this. Just slide this under, and then I fold it up like that. So I'm going to let it dry a bit, and then I'll do the other three sides. So I've attached my hinges. Next I'm going to take my side pieces, and I'm going to attach them to the other side of the hinge, and then that's going to hold up like that. Now I'm going to put some glue on the hinge, and when I attach my piece, don't put it flat up against the edge, because then you'll have a hard time folding it up. When you attach it, you're going to stand it up straight and then put it on the outside of your base piece like that while it's standing up straight, and then you can fold the hinge up on the outside. When it dries, you're going to see that there's going to be a gap between the base and the side piece, and that's fine because that will allow you to fold the piece up and finish assembling the box. So I'm going to put some glue on my hinge. So I'm going to put this standing up like that, and then I just fold up the hinge like that. Make sure it's nice and straight and it's snug up against the base here, so when I fold this down, there's that little crack. And I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to do the other three sides the same way. So here are my four sides attached, like that, and here's the back. So now I'm going to finish assembling the bottom by joining my corners like that, and then I'm going to glue these side hinges like that to hold the two edges together. And I'll be doing that on all 4 sides on the corners. I'm going to line up the top of the sides with the top of the hinge, and I get to hear that to one side. Make sure these corners are joined together and they're nice and straight, and then I glue the hinge on the other side. So again, I'm going to let this dry really well, and then I'm going to do the other 3 sides of my box. And here's my completed base. So I'm going to let this dry, and in the meantime, I'm going to start working on the top section. Now I'm going to do the top section of the box, and this part is constructed the same way as the base. So this would be like the underneath of the box, and then I've got the 4 sides. So I'm going to construct it exactly the same way. I've got my pieces here. So there's my base piece, and then I've got the sides of the top section of the box. It'll go like that. And again, I've got my hinge pieces cut and scored along the 1-inch side. So these are my 4 side pieces. And then I've got my longer edge pieces. So this will be attached the same way as I did before, with these longer hinges underneath the base. Like that. So I'm going to glue those in place, and then after that I'm going to attach the side pieces like that. And then once that's dry, I'm going to put my corner hinges on the same way. Now, just before I do that though, I think it's going to be easier if I cut the slot on my box before I glue these together. And that's this slot here where the cards go in. So I have this one about 3/4 inches from the top edge. You can put it a bit lower if you like. And this measures 7 inches. Yeah, about 7 inches across. Again, you can make this whatever size you want. So it comes to about 1/2 inch from each side of the edges here. So I'm going to mark on one of my side pieces. So I want to go about 3/4 inches from the top. And again, this is whatever your preferences are. Like that. So I'm just going to draw a line across. And it's 1/2 inch wide. 1/2 inch. Like that. And about 1/2 inch from the edge. So we'll say here, like that. Now these lines are going to be covered up by my paper anyways. So now you can use an X-Acto knife or another sharp tool and just cut out this slot. So here's my slot. I couldn't find my X-Acto knife, so I just used a regular sharp knife to cut through there. And this is going to be covered with my scrapbook paper anyways. So I'll have a nice clean edge there when the box is done. So I'm going to go ahead and glue my pieces together. One thing to note, when I'm attaching my piece that has the slot on it, because I'm only about 3/4 inches from the top and my hinge measures 1 inch, it's going to cover part of the opening. So I'm going to trim this off my hinge by about 1/4 inch. Now this should fit just along the edge. And I'll make sure I've got glue all along this very edge here. So that it stays down along the opening. Doesn't matter which side I put it on. I stand that up. Fold the hinge up like that. So now I'm going to attach my other pieces, and it's the same thing when I go to attach these corner pieces. Because I'm about 1/2 inch away from the edge and this measures 1 inch, I'm going to trim some off here so that it just lines up with the end of the slot like that. So I've got these 3 sides put up, and now I'm going to attach this side, the one with the slot. So I've trimmed my paper so that this seam is narrower and it's just going to fit like that. And then I do the same thing on this side. the top part. Now I still need to make the base of this box, which forms the cover of the other one. This section here. So this is like a lid, and it too has a little lip over the edge, and it sits on top of the base. Now I want to cut my hole in the base piece, and it's about half an inch inside the area of this box. So I'm going to take my piece of chipboard, and I'm going to position my lid on here, and I'm going to center it all around. Now this measures 11 1/4, and this measures 8 inches. About 8 inches. There's a little bit more because of that little gap where the sides meet the base. So very, very little. It's about 8 1/8. So at 1 5/8, I can mark, that's about the center, or that's the left. So 1 5/8. And 1 5/8, so it's about here, like that, and then 1 5/8 from the edge here. So I'm going to take just a pen, and I'm going to mark around the box. So that shows me where the cover is going to go. I'm going to make my cut about half an inch inside this square. That will leave me a very tiny lip on which I can attach the top cover. Here's my lid with the opening cut. I'm going to be evening this out a little bit, and besides, this won't show because I'm going to be wrapping my scrapbook paper around there. And I'm not going to attach my top yet because this section will be covered with scrapbook paper before this is attached, but I still need to finish constructing it. So this is the original square that I drew, and then I trimmed half an inch inside. So I'll have that little lip that this cover can attach to. Now I'm going to finish attaching the sides the same as I did for the other boxes, and I've got my hinges cut, and I'm going to attach them again on each side of this lid, and then these sides will attach like that. And then again, I'm going to use these little corner hinges to attach them together like that. Now you'll note that my cardstock for this lid is not quite as wide as my sides and my base. That's because I'm using 8.5 by 11 inch cardstock, and my lid measures 11 1/4. Now if you have cardstock that measures 12 by 12, not a problem. You can trim that so that it'll fit exactly 11 1/4. But I'm using this 8.5 by 11 cardstock, but I'm not too worried about that because after I attach these, even though there's going to be a little gap here, I'm going to make these little corners, and the little corners will overlap here, so it's going to hide any little imperfections on my lid. So I'm going to go ahead and attach these hinges centered on each side, and then attach my sides. So here's my lid with the sides attached, and that's going to fit perfectly on there. And before I put the top on, I'm going to put my scrapbook paper to cover the edges and the sides. I'm going to finish working on this lid section that my top will attach to. So I'm going to take a piece of cardstock or a piece of paper. I'm using scrapbook paper, and I'm going to position this and then trim around to fit. So I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to leave a little white edge showing all around, and I'm going to mark where I need to cut the paper. Here and here, like that. I'm going to attach that to the lid like that. Now it's okay if these little corners show. I'm going to be covering those up eventually anyways. So I think I will just use a little bit of two-sided tape. You can also use glue if you prefer. I was going to smooth these edges, but I don't really need to because this is all going to be covered anyway. Okay. Now, I'm going to attach the box to this section here, so I want to make sure that my paper is nice and flat here. So I think I'm going to use my glue just around the edges. I had put my tape on the wrong side of the paper, so I cut another piece and I taped it on the back. Okay, so that's going to go down like this, and I'm going to center that. Now I can remove the rest of my tape backing. I'm going to press down gently around where I put my glue. Just flip this over like that. Next, I'm going to cut the opening, so I'm going to use an X-Acto knife or another cutting tool, and I'm going to cut about 1/2 inch away from the edges, like that. It doesn't have to be super straight because you're not going to see it. I'll keep this piece of paper. Next, I use my scissors and I just trim the corners like that at an angle so that I can fold the paper on the inside of the cover of the lid. And that's going to go like that. So again, I'm going to use some glue on the inside. And then I'm going to let this dry for a bit. My paper is quite stiff. Okay, so now I'm going to put this aside and I'll just let it dry. I'm going to work on the top. Now I'm going to make the hinges that will attach the top to the lid. And I cut my pieces of cardstock. And these are 1 inch wide and I scored along the middle. The first half is going to attach to the outside of my lid, of my box, and then it's going to fold under, and that section is what's going to attach to the big lid. So let's just put some glue on there. Sorry, I was off camera there. So this attaches to the outside of the box, and then this half is what will attach to the lid. I'm going to do the same thing on each side. Now I'm going to let this dry for a bit. It's easier to mat my top section before attaching it to this part. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I've cut my pieces, and again, I just laid my paper down and measured, and I'm leaving a tiny little line of the cardstock showing all around. So I'm going to go ahead and put some tape on here. And I want this to be nice and flat here, so I'm going to put a little bit of glue around this edge just to make sure the paper lays flat. Watch you don't go up too high so that your glue won't be visible if you go all the way up to the edge. And now I'm going to lay this on here. So now I'm going to cut the opening. And you can sort of see that inside here. I'm going to just put a slit across. You won't be able to see what I'm doing, but I'll show you on the other side. here I just did a slit, and I'm going to finish just cutting that almost to the end. Like that. And then I'm going to trim these little corners here so that I can fold the paper inside. Just like that. And then I can fold this in. I will be covering the edge with embellishments too, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And just fold that in like that. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the inside to hold the paper in place. So here's my opening. And I'll probably put a little piece of ribbon here around the edge, or some little flat back pearls. So now I can finish matting the other sides of my lid. So I've matted my sides, my top, and now this is ready to attach to the lid. Like that. I'm just going to start by attaching one side, make sure it's nice and straight, and then I can attach the other side. Now, when I put this down, I'm going to have this flap on the outside. This flap will attach to this edge, like that. So if I flip this over, I can see where the flap is, and I can line it up like that. Okay, and then I'm going to flip it over and make sure that it's straight. So I'm going to start by putting some glue along the seam on the outside. And I'm using glue because it's strong and it will give me a little bit of time to shift things around if it's not perfectly straight. Okay. So the other way I can do it too is just put the flap down like that and just line it up with one edge and then make sure it's centered left to right. Just fold this down like that. It's not bad. And then flip it over. And I can attach it like that. I'm going to let this dry. And then I will attach the other sides. Okay, this is dried. So now I'm going to put some glue on these other edges. So there's the glue along the three edges, and then I can just lay this down like that and press a bit. And then I can squeeze on the inside, make sure there's a nice solid bond. And I let this dry well. Next, I'm going to cover the top of my box with paper, and I'm going to cover the sides of the bottom section. You can also cover the underneath if you want. And then I'm going to put some paper along the edges here. Now, I'm going to put, I think, some ribbon that will cover this little piece of chipboard that shows at the bottom. If you're not going to cover this with ribbon, what you can do is when you put your paper, you can take a piece of paper like this, trim it and glue it, and then just fold it inside. Actually, maybe that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fold my strip of paper so that it goes inside the cover, and I'm going to get a nice even bottom edge there. I might still put some trim along the bottom. And then I'm going to make these little corners that will cover any little imperfections here. So I've matted all of my sides, including the little border around the bottom here, and I just folded the paper inside the box, and that gives me a nice clean edge. Then I also matted the sides of the bottom section, and I left a little border of cardstock showing on the bottom, left and right, and I lined up my paper so that it's even with the top. I didn't bother folding this inside because it won't be visible anyway. So this section is going to be covered by the top, so you won't see that edge anyways. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to make these little corners here that are going to hide this section here. So my little corners will fit on this section of my lid. And if you're going to be putting something here that's going to cover this anyways, and you don't need to do this, but I just want to finish off the corners a little bit nicer. So I start with my pieces of cardstock. You can use whatever color you want that matches with your paper. And I cut these, I don't want them too large. I cut these so that they measure 2 1/8, but you can use whatever size you prefer. And then I'm going to score these across this way and this way. Now, because this is 2 1/8 and my scoreboard only has these 1/8 marks, I'm going to have to just position this along the top. It goes up to 2 1/8. I'm just going to move it over slightly to the right, and I'm going to score at 1 1/8 like that, so it's right in the middle. And I'll do the same thing on this side. Just move it over to the right a little bit. So I end up with a piece like that. So I'm going to fold this on each side like that. And then I'm just going to slit one of the fold lines right up to the middle like that. And then this will fit on my box. I just fold it down like that and then wrap this, I position it here. Okay, and all I need to do is fold this down like that and wrap the corners like this. and I'm just going to attach that. Now I think I'm going to cut this little section here diagonally. Like that. And then this just sits like that. I'm going to use my two-sided tape, I think, and I'll just tape that down. And for the bottom edge, I'm going to put a little bit of trim all along the bottom. But now you can decorate your box however you like. I'm going to finish making my little corners, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do to the bottom section of my box. So I've attached my corners, and I put this little bling along the bottom edge. And I just use my glue gun to attach that. And then I also put some bling around the top section here. And for the bottom, I'm going to put these little corners. I took a piece of cardstock and I punched a design on both sides, and I scored it in two, and those are going to fit around my corners like that. And I'm going to trim the top edge to fit here, and the top edge, this section here, won't be visible because it's going to be covered by my border. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to put some little buttons on there when I finish embellishing the box. So here's my little border, and I'm going to put some embellishments on there, either buttons or little flowers. And there's what it looks like with the top on. So I'm going to finish embellishing this box, and then I'll come back and show you the finished product. So here's my completed box. I've got some little flat back pearls around the opening, and I put some little buttons surrounded by lace on my four corners. And then on these corners I put some little ribbon roses. And just to finish off the box, underneath, let's see if I can lift this up with one hand, I did put a piece of scrapbook paper underneath the box just to finish that off. The top, I just put some more of these little ribbon roses, and then I have this little fabric flower that I attached with a pin to some tulle that wraps around the box. Now, at your special event, you can either seal this box closed with glue, or if you plan on reusing it or keeping the box, you can just tie it closed with a piece of tulle like this one. And then I just attached this flower on with a little pin. So I can remove that, and then this was just held together with a little piece of ribbon like that. Inside the cover, I also opted to put a piece of scrapbook paper in there just to finish it off a little bit better. But that's not necessary since you're not going to see that anyways. So I hope you enjoyed working with this tutorial, and you can make these boxes for special events like weddings, anniversaries, and birthdays. And this box is very pretty. I think it's geared to a wedding, but it can also be used for an anniversary or birthday or any special event. I hope you had fun. Bye.